Can genetic traits skip generations and still be present in a family lineage?
Hello, and welcome to an exciting discussion about genetics. In this video, we're going to tackle an intriguing question. Can genetic traits skip generations and still be present in a family lineage? Let's take a deep dive into the fascinating world of genetics and inheritance to find out.
What is a genetic trait?
Firstly, we need to understand what a genetic trait is. A genetic trait is a distinguishable feature or characteristic in an organism. This trait could be anything from the color of your eyes to your blood type. These traits are determined by specific segments of DNA known as genes. Each individual receives a set of these genes from both parents, which in combination dictate the traits we see.
Understanding dominant and recessive genes.
The transmission of traits from one generation to the next depends on whether the trait is determined by dominant or recessive genes. In simple terms, for a trait controlled by a pair of genes, if one gene version, allele, is dominant and the other is recessive, the dominant trait tends to be expressed, while the recessive trait is hidden. However, that recessive trait is still present within the genetic code of the individual. If that individual reproduces with another individual carrying the same recessive trait, their offspring can potentially express that trait, which could be interpreted as the trait skipping a generation.
Can genetic traits skip generations?
Now to the crux of our discussion. Yes, genetic traits can indeed skip generations. The recessive traits we just discussed can seem to disappear in one generation, only to reappear in the next. This is common in conditions like cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia, where both parents must be carriers of the recessive allele for their offspring to express the trait. It's important to remember, though, that these traits aren't truly skipping generations in the literal sense. They're present in the carriers, just not expressed.
What does this mean for family lineage?
What does all this mean for a family lineage? It means that a family can carry a genetic trait for many generations without it being expressed. The skipping of generations is really the non-expression of a trait in one generation and its expression in a subsequent one, due to the specific combinations of dominant and recessive genes. It also means genetic counseling can be vital for families with histories of certain genetic disorders. Understanding how these traits can seemingly skip generations can help in predicting the chances of the trait appearing in future generations. And that wraps up our discussion on genetics and inheritance. We've seen that genetic traits can indeed skip generations, but it's really a matter of whether the traits are expressed or not. Remember, our genes carry the code of who we are, and understanding them better helps us comprehend ourselves and our family histories more thoroughly. Thanks for joining this fascinating exploration of genetics, and we hope you found it enlightening.